You are the son of the most evil president in the world. Not the most powerful, not the most controversial, not the most polarizing, the most evil. The kind of evil that gets debated in international courts. The kind that makes foreign diplomats go quiet when your last name comes up in conversation. The kind that history books will not be kind to. And you didn't choose any of it. You were born in a government hospital in a country most people can't find on a map. There were no paparazzi outside, no photographers, no trending hashtag with your name. The world didn't celebrate your birth. It didn't even know about it. But somewhere in a classified file inside a government building, your name was already written down. Not as a child, as a relationship. Son of. That was your first entry into history. Not a birth certificate, a security dossier. Your early childhood is not a childhood in any way the word is usually meant. You don't grow up in a house, you grow up in a compound. There's a difference. A house has neighbors. A compound has walls. A house has a front yard where kids ride bikes. A compound has guards with rifles at every gate, and surveillance cameras on every corner, and escape tunnels your father had built into the foundation before you were old enough to walk. In case of what, nobody explains to you. But you learn early that just in case is the operating philosophy of your entire existence. You have toys. You have a room. You even have a dog for a while, until the dog bites one of the guards and disappears overnight, and nobody talks about it again. You learn not to ask where things go when they disappear. That lesson will serve you for the rest of your life. The men outside your door are not there because they love you. They are not there because your father asked them to protect you out of warmth. You are leverage. In the world your father operates in, a son is not just a son. A son is a vulnerability, a bargaining chip, a weak point in the armor. The men outside your door exist to protect the regime's weak point. That weak point is you. You understand this before you are old enough to fully understand anything else. School is the first place you realize how different your world is from everyone else's. You don't go to a normal school. The teachers are vetted by the government. The curriculum is approved by officials whose names you will only learn years later. History class is the strangest experience of your childhood because history class is, in your school, a performance. Your father appears in the textbooks, not as one figure among many, debated and complicated and human. He appears the way monuments appear, singular, inevitable, correct. You sit at your desk at age 9 and read a chapter about your father's rise to power. The chapter calls it a liberation. You have heard other words used for it once, whispered between two servants who thought the hallway was empty. That servant was gone the next morning, and you never saw them again, and you never asked where they went. You learned something that day that 9-year-olds should never have to learn. Some words are dangerous, and the wrong ones said in the wrong place will make people disappear. At 10 years old, you attend your first official state event. There are crowds, there are flags, there are military marches that go on so long your legs go numb, even though you are only standing and watching. Your father is on a stage behind bulletproof glass, waving with that particular wave of his, slow, deliberate, like he is conducting something larger than any of the people below him. You are placed beside him. Someone tells you before you walk out, stand straight, look proud, do not wave unless he waves first. So you stand straight, you look proud. You perform pride so completely that a photograph of you that day will later appear in 3 separate government publications. You are 10 years old and you are already a prop. The crowd is cheering, tens of thousands of people cheering, and you look at them and you think, do they mean it? You will spend the next 20 years of your life never being able to answer that question. Because in a country like yours, the line between genuine love and performed survival is invisible from the stage. Adolescence is a particular kind of hell when your father is who your father is. It is not that you are unhappy, it is that you are not allowed to be unhappy in any way that means anything. Because honesty in your house is the most dangerous luxury.
At 13, you begin to understand what your father actually does, not the textbook version, not the stage version. You overhear a conversation between officials who assume the corridor is empty. You catch a foreign radio broadcast that someone forgot to scramble. You see a document left on a desk that was not meant for your eyes. You don't read it fully. You don't have to. You read enough. You go to your bedroom and you sit very still for a very long time. There is nobody to talk to about this. Your mother exists in a kind of careful elegance, composed, unreachable on anything that matters. Your tutors are employees of the state. The few children of other officials you are allowed near have all learned the same thing you have learned. Never say the real thing out loud. Never. So you sit with it. You carry it the way you will carry everything from now on. Quietly. Alone. In a room where you always assume someone might be listening. At 15, you find a crack in the internet filter. The version of the internet you are allowed to see is a curated garden, clean, controlled, approved. But you are clever and you are bored, and eventually you find a way through. What you find on the other side stops you completely. Your father's face everywhere. On news sites, on human rights organization reports, on lists of names, lists of events, lists of things that happened in your country that you half knew but had been able to keep at a comfortable distance because nobody had ever laid them out that plainly, with that much documentation, with that many photographs. You close the browser. You open it again. You close it again. You spend the next week walking through the compound like nothing is different, sitting at dinner across from him, watching him eat, watching him speak to aides with the same calm authority he has always had. And the whole time you were holding this new and irreversible knowledge inside you, measured against the fact that he is still, no matter what any report says, your father. And he loves you. That is the part nobody on the outside will ever fully understand. He loves you in his particular suffocating, conditional way. And you love him back in the only way you have ever known how. Carefully, with one eye always on the door.
At 17, a foreign journalist tries to make contact. It is subtle. A note passed through someone you barely know with a question and a promise of anonymity. We just want to know what it's like, your side of things. You hold that note for 3 days. Then you burn it. Not because you don't want to answer, but because you have lived long enough to know what happens to people who talk. And more than that, you have lived long enough to know that your answer would be used, shaped, placed inside a story that was already written before anyone asked you a single question. You would become either a victim to be pitied or a symbol to be deployed. You don't want to be either. You want to be a person. You burn the note, and you go back to your life, which is not a life in any way you could describe it to someone from the outside, but it is the only one you have. Your father has enemies. This is not a metaphor. This is a logistical reality that shapes every hour of your existence. What this means for you practically, you cannot leave the country. Not really. Travel exists in theory. Occasional state visits, heavily choreographed to allied governments. You stand in foreign capitals wearing the right clothes, shaking the right hands, watching the right ceremonies. But you are never a tourist. You are never free. Even abroad, you are the regime's face. Younger, softer, more palatable. And you are watched as closely by your own security as by the foreign governments hosting you. At 19, on one of these trips you spend 40 minutes alone in a hotel bathroom. It is the longest you have ever been genuinely unobserved in a foreign country. You sit on the edge of the bathtub and you don't do anything significant. You just sit there. It is the freest you have ever felt. 40 minutes in a hotel bathroom. That is what freedom looks like for you. The question you are never allowed to ask out loud is the one that lives in your chest every single day. What do I do with this? With the name, with the knowledge, with the love you genuinely feel for a man the world considers unredeemable, with the guilt that is not even yours and yet lives in your body like it was, with the life you have been handed, lavish by every material measure and impoverished in every way that actually matters. You didn't commit the crimes. You didn't order anything. You were a child in a compound with a dog that disappeared and textbooks that lied, and guards whose job was to keep you alive as an asset. None of that was your choice, but the world will not ask about your choices. The world will look at your face, which looks like his, and make a decision before you open your mouth. You have known this since you were 15, reading those reports through a crack in a filtered browser in a room where someone might have been watching. You are not responsible for what he did, and you will spend the rest of your life living inside the outline of it. At 23, something shifts. It is not a single event. It is a slow accumulation of moments. A conversation that goes further than it should. A trip abroad where someone asks you a question nobody has ever asked you before. Not, what is it like to be his son? Simply, what do you want? You don't answer immediately. You're not sure you have an answer, but the question stays with you the way real questions do, working on you from the inside, slowly, quietly. What do you want? You want to exist outside of this sentence, outside of son of, outside of the regime and the compound and the guards and the name and the weight of a history you were born into but never chose. You start to think carefully and dangerously about what it would mean to become a different kind of person than the one this story already has you cast as. The end of your father's rule, when it comes, does not come gently. Regimes like his never end gently. On the other side of it, you find yourself in a different country with a different status and a name that now means something new and heavier than it did before. Exile is a specific kind of silence. You are safe. That matters. But safety is not the same as peace. Safety is just the absence of immediate danger. Peace is something else entirely, and you are not sure you know what it looks like yet. International journalists want interviews. Human rights organizations want testimony. Political groups want you to either support them or they want to discredit you. Everyone has a use for you. Everyone has already decided what you represent before you say a word. You decline almost everything, not out of loyalty to your father, but because you have spent a lifetime watching words get used for purposes they were never meant for. You are careful with yours now.